This week, there were mixed messages following an outbreak of foot and mouth disease on the popular tourist destination of Bali. Some opposition figures claim borders with Bali should be closed and strict quarantine put in place. Government and agricultural leaders worried about previous cattle export bans to Indonesia and noted that Australia already deals with many countries that have foot and mouth disease. Edward Boyd this week caught up with Lachlan Graham from Argyle Foods, one of Australia's biggest cattle producers.
The Argyle Foods Group is an integrated agri company. We operate and manage livestock on properties from Queensland down to Victoria. And within those properties, we develop and manage carbon projects as well, with overlaying regenerative ag practices on the properties. Again, we're an integrated company, so we own and operate those properties. We process the livestock. We distribute those meat products domestically and also to global markets through joint venture partnerships and toll processing partnerships, having previously owned our own processing plants up until prior to COVID. So yeah, we've got a full sort of supply chain control, supply chain management. We supply about 5,000 retail outlets across Asia and Australia.
Yeah, where are your main customers? Is it here or overseas?
So the main customer base is probably still domestic and Asia, I guess. My brother and co-CEO is based in Hong Kong, has been there for 8 years in our office in Hong Kong. And through there we manage our exports across Asia, less so China in the last few years, but also Asia, the Middle East, the UK, and a big focus on the US market.
And how big are your land holdings across Australia?
Oh, so our acreage of land that we're operating on is around about 450,000 acres. Across different properties. Now they're sort of smaller, intense properties in the southwest slopes of New South Wales, up to large-scale properties in western New South Wales and southern Queensland.
And roughly how much head of livestock have you got?
You know, in the last couple of years, we're running anywhere between 8,000 to 20,000 head at any one time. And the business has really, I suppose, pivoted a lot as we hit COVID. We lost 95% of our meat sales revenue and market access. We lost our licence and access into the China market about 2 months after COVID. We also lost all our food service, our airline business. So we had a really big impact. In the last 2 years, we've obviously reset the company, a big focus on the pastoral side of the business, I guess. Building our livestock numbers, developing our carbon projects and our carbon partnerships, really sort of led by the joint venture partnership we have with the MLA. And we're gearing ourselves up to build our livestock production system so we can really penetrate the US market particularly and domestic market when the cycles change, and we're modelling that happening next year.
And will customers pay a premium for decarbonised products?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're setting a goal to sort of aim to double the value of our red meat, you know, basically our carcass utilisation, you know, by the next sort of 8 years. So it's a pretty ambitious target, but I think certainly the right consumers will pay for those claims and attributes, and those consumers are the targeted markets. Australia for one, but also the US, North American market, US and Canada, and the UK market on the back of the FTA, where consumers care about, one, the environment, the sustainability of the environment, and the quality and the welfare of the livestock that we've processed, and obviously the people that operate in our company.
Obviously a huge roadmap then for growth for your company, but what happens with foot and mouth disease on the doorstep of Australia right now in Indonesia?
Yeah, so the foot and mouth disease and the and lumpy skin disease, two very sort of concerning outbreaks, and I guess the industry as a whole, all the peak bodies and the government are doing a really good job. I think, you know, globally there's 20 other countries in the world that are FMD positive and managing that through vaccines and you know, general processes. The concern obviously with Indonesia and Bali is that it's an outbreak, so priority number one is control the outbreak. And I think there's a lot of misinformation being put around, and I think at the moment we're doing the right thing. I think in terms of, you know, really close monitoring and of incoming customers from those two countries is critical, because I think the higher risk is the meat products being not declared or coming in people's you know, luggage and whatnot. So I think a higher and an increased sort of scrutiny of every single incoming passenger. That's where I'd be focusing on, getting more staff there, more biosecurity people, scanning every bit of luggage, unpacking every bit of luggage. I think as a next step potentially, you know, there could be, you know, like a mandatory hotel quarantine for those incoming passengers, but the key focus being that's the main risk. They're doing things like the foot baths and whatnot to monitor shoes, but the key risk is products coming in, meat products coming in that are in luggage. So I think that should be the focus. I don't think it's necessary to consider closing the borders or things like that, given the, you know, the trade implications that would have on other industries in agriculture like grains, grains, horticulture, dairy, for example. So I think the key focus is really target those incoming passengers and increase awareness and advice. And I think through that, the message you get through, that'll be the best way. And I think the current biosecurity measures are actually working, like what we're picking up and how they're controlling it. So that's probably my view on where we're at, but it'll certainly have it's a massive risk. It'll have a huge impact on the industry. It'll wipe it out overnight. It'll be a massive impact on our business. We're a diversified business. We have other enterprises over and above, our beef exports and our lamb exports, but, our industry and agriculture in general would be decimated if this was to come in. And I think it is a key focus, and I've probably, from a processor and a producer, I've never seen such a call to arms. And we've had great biosecurity measures in place for decades now, and they've proven and they've worked. And now it's about using this as a catalyst to improve those measures and put them in place for the long term, not just the short and medium term, but the long term, and continually improve them. So I think we're getting the right message out. I think we're getting the right results. I think priority one is Australia's support to Indonesia as a trade partner to control the outbreak.
Vaccinating cattle.
Vaccinating the livestock. So I think if they can control the outbreak, then essentially Indonesia and Bali would be considered like many of the other countries that have got FMD, cases that are live and being managed and treated. So that's the priority number one. And then maintaining that as in not entering our borders. So control it at the source, help, provide assistance at the source, and then control the borders. And I think the clearest way, particularly from an FMD point of view, given it's going to be coming into the country via humans and travel, as opposed to lumpy skin disease, I think controlling it at the borders through absolute passenger checking and going through all of checking their luggage and x-raying it and controlling it, because that's the biggest risk.
Say if it does get in, what would happen? Like, would we not see any meat anymore on supermarket shelves? Or
it'd be catastrophic. Having I lived in the UK in 2000, 2001, having seen that firsthand. So you would have the animal welfare, a lot of animals would be quarantined, immediate cessation of movement between borders. So you'd have, knock-on effect on many industries, whether that's feedlots, grain growers, grain distribution, livestock carriers. There'd be a huge suite of industries that would be knocked apart. But the animal welfare, in terms of testing and destroying animals, like, it's pretty confronting, the images that we've seen in the past. And for someone that produces, livestock, and being certified humane is such an important aspect for our business. So that, for one, is something really uncomfortable with, what the outcome that has to be put in place if that was the case. And then the knock-on effect is you lose immediate market access to all of the best markets in the world and the key markets. So essentially it wipes out $300 million a week of Australian trade. And then the knock-on effect would flow through to domestic retailers. There'd be a shortage of supply, there'd be lack of livestock being moved, processing falls off a cliff. Yeah, essentially you'd see meat, red meat products, pork, lamb, any of those products off the shelf or in very short supply, and then that would require importing products, which Australia, one, doesn't really like to do. Secondly, as a consumer, and we're used to having such good access to good quality products in Australia that we've Australian grown, but it also inadvertently increases the risk of more biosecurity concerns by importing food products.
Lachlan Graham, co-founder of Argyle Foods Group, thanks so much for your time today.
No, great, Ed. Nice to meet you. Thanks for your time.